Oh, it's a lot more quiet. This is great. But I don't know what my webcam's seeing, so I can't tell whether it's working or not. What are you seeing in my webcam? Yeah. I'm actually in, there's a phone stall that they have here. Got about a minute, and then I'll just start recording. I should have some idea. Yeah, yeah. Why don't we go ahead and get started? Mark, we are there. Hey, everybody. Wayne and Mark here for our last live Economic Action Team webinar of the year. We sure appreciate you being team members and being here with us. This is going to be a little bit of a nostalgic stroll down memory lane. And as I was preparing for this, I was able to get excited about some things that I really just hadn't seen in a while. So primarily what we're going to do today is talk about Ecolonomics and its history. And so it'll be a lot of discussion about Dennis Weaver and also about other people that were involved in the Institute of Ecolonomics and a lot of other cool things that went on in the last 26, almost 27 years. Dennis founded the Institute of Ecolonomics in 1993. So, well, it actually is 27 years. We're coming up on 28. It was in March of 1993. So, a couple of logistics, if you wouldn't mind. We've been doing this poll now about what people would like to see us do in the new year. And one comment that we get back more than anything else is we'd like to be able to have breakout sessions so we can talk too. I don't remember the last one of these webinars that I've done where I just don't go out of my way to encourage you guys to get engaged. So be brave. Somebody raise your hand and say, I want my webcam on. I want to talk. I want to be a part of this. Or at least, at the very least, use the question, a little box over on the right-hand side, go to webinar and put some comments and some questions in there. Put in some ones if you're hearing me all right, and if you can see everything. I'm going to turn the screen off for a second here in a minute and just be my webcam. And what's really weird is I can't see my webcam, so I have no idea what part of me is being filmed. I'm actually at my office share location that I told you guys about, which is this co-working facility. And I moved out of my regular office location into what's called a phone booth. So I'll try to kind of take the webcam and show, you know, there's the door. And I think that behind me, maybe you're seeing it, are some clocks with times at different times around the world. So they give us these rooms to be able to use when it is fairly loud in the building space. And so my office is right next to a conference room, and they're having a large Christmas party in there. So they've gotten a little loud. So I moved into here. So again, today's session is going to be about the history of the Institute of Ecolonomics. So I'm going to actually turn my screen off for a second here. And Mark, you got to help me because I don't see anything, and tell me when it's off. when the whole screen was my webcam. Is that what you see now? Is that right? All right. So I'm going to start out, and I'll show you a bunch of pictures of him, but talking about Dennis Weaver. Dennis Weaver was an amazing guy, and he was born in 1924, and he died on February 24th, 2006. So we're coming up on the 14th year anniversary of his death. And he asked myself and Scott Pardulis to take over the Institute of Economics in 2006, and we turned him down. We said, no, nobody's going to be able to take over for you. And we had a number of really cool board members at that time, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. But none of them really wanted to take over from a day-to-day basis. And it wasn't until 3 years later, in 2009, when Jerry Weaver, his wife, and amazing lady, and they had been married when he died for 63 years, I believe. She asked if we would do it, and we just couldn't turn Jerry down, so we agreed to do it. And I'll show you a picture of Scott Pardulis and others. But so he was active as an actor from the early 1950s until literally right before his death in 2006. And he's best known for 2 television shows here in the United States. One of them called Gunsmoke, where he played Chester, and that was a Western show. And the second was McCloud, where he played Sam McCloud, who was a marshal. And he actually won a couple of Emmys for that series in the 1970s. He was born in Joplin, Missouri, which is middle of the United States, very rural place. I was actually there a little bit earlier this year when we transferred the Institute of Economics from Joplin to Denver. I went there and visited with a number of people that were there. His father was actually part Native American, and Dennis had a huge amount of love and care for Native Americans, and did a lot of things for them. So he grew up in a lot of different places. His dad was sort of an itinerant worker during the Depression time frame that occurred during the 20s. And Dennis said that he wanted to be an actor from as early as he could remember. And he ended up going to University of Oklahoma in Norman, Oklahoma, and he studied drama, and he was a track star. And he actually enlisted while he was still in college. He went to World War II. He was a pilot in the United States Navy, and he married Jerry, who I mentioned earlier, his childhood sweetheart, as soon as he returned from the war. And in 1948, after World War II, he tried out for the U.S. Olympic team in the decathlon, which is an event with you do 10 different events over a 2-day period. And he actually got 6th in that competition. And the winner was a guy named Bob Mathias. Bob actually won the Olympics that year. And Dennis didn't get to go to the Olympics because only the top 3 finished. Well, the trials for that were in New York. And he told me one time, he said, after that was done, I said, I did so poorly in the Olympic trials, I decided just to stay in New York and try my hand at acting. And that's really when he started acting. So in 1948, he did several things on Broadway and was able to get a contract fairly early. He was a really good actor. And in 1952, an actress that some of you would have heard of named Shelly Winters got him a contract with Universal Studio. And eventually it was Universal Studios that made Gunsmoke, the show that he was a star in. And that lasted from, I think it was at the time, it still maybe is, the longest running live action series in U.S. television history. It was over 20 years. And he received an Emmy for that in 1959 for Best Supporting Actor in a Dramatic Series. So then in 1970, he was still acting in Gunsmoke. He started to do McCloud too. And then since then, he's done a number of other things. But most importantly, I met Dennis in the early 80s, late 80s. And he had told many people, me included, he said, the only reason I act, and he really meant this, was to earn enough money that I could put it all into making the planet better. And so that's what led to him coming up with the word Ecolonomics in 1993. And he was very, very proud of that. In 1973 to 1975, he was also the president of the Screen Actors Guild, which is a very prestigious position. Let's see if anybody, I'll give a prize to anybody if they know another famous American. And don't look it up on Google, just guess at it if you can, or if you know it, give it. Who was the president of the Screen Actors Guild? A prominent American. And Mark, I'm not going to look at the question and answer, so if you can look there, make sure to tell me if somebody put something in. I'll tell you who it was in just a minute. Remind me about that. And again, acting is one of those things that when you're doing well, you don't have to do it full time. You're probably working 2 or 3 days a week. And then when you're really making a movie or something, you work for 10 days straight, and then you have 2 months off, and you don't do anything. So that was Dennis's history. Mentioned in his personal life, he married Jerry, and he was a vegetarian, and since 1958 in his life, he studied yoga and meditation. He was a devoted follower of the Indian guru that started what's called the Self-Realization Fellowship in the United States, and that was a big deal to him. He built the home that he ended up living and having the most fun in his life in Ridgeway, Colorado, in about 1980, I think, and lived there until he died. Not 1980, about 1990, because he was there for about 14 years. He actually lost a daughter-in-law who was his son Robbie's wife, in that big car issue that occurred in Santa Monica in 2003. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but a guy just went crazy and drove a car at high speeds through the shoppers at the farmer's market, and it killed 10 people. And Dennis's daughter-in-law was one of those. Obviously, you know about his activism with the Institute of Ecolonomics, and that started in 1993, and we're even listed in his wiki page as being here in Berthoud, Colorado now. He also formed something called LIFE, which is Love is Feeding Everyone, and they would feed 150,000 homeless or needy people in Los Angeles a week, and I'm going to show you a little article about that in just a minute. He was active as a fundraiser in a number of different political campaigns. We've talked about this before, but he did what was called the Drive for Survive in 2004, where he led a fleet of alternative fuel vehicles across the United States to raise awareness about America's dependence on oil. And that was really the start of the Institute of Ecolonomics, because that got us a lot of publicity because of that. He was just a wonderful man. Unfortunately, he died of prostate cancer in his home in 2006. So I'm going to take the screen back and show you some things about him. My screen back on now, Mark. So this is an article written in the LA Times, and you don't see the date. but About Life, the food bank that they had that was founded 16 years previous to this article. Here it is, September 1999. And Valerie Harper is another actress that you've probably heard of, and you're going to see pictures in the show in just a little bit about all kinds of actors and actresses that were involved with the Institute of Ecolonomics. But this is just an article about life. Love is feeding everyone. That describes a number of things that went there. And here's names of a whole bunch of the celebrities who had lent their names and that actually went out and fed people. They went and stood in the streets and took food to people. Garth Brooks, David Geffen, Whoopi Goldberg, Bette Midler, and Shirley MacLaine. Shirley MacLaine, by the way, was on our board on the Institute of Economics for a time. So even a year in 1998 before this was stopped, and this was pretty controversial. They actually were sort of forced out of business in doing this. They were salvaging over 6 million pounds of food a week. You can see it here in the article. And salvaging means they were just getting what was waste, which we should still be doing a much better job of today. At least here in this country, and I think most of Western culture, we waste so much food. Anyway, they were salvaging 6 million pounds a week and feeding 187,000 people through 200 different community agencies that they partnered with. And beyond that, they expanded and they were educating children about hunger and doing a number of other things. They've been struggling themselves because basically Dennis had supported it almost in its entirety. And when this article was made, they actually didn't even want to comment on it because unfortunately they had to shut down in 1999. Their budget had gone from several $1 million a month down to $20,000 a month, as you can see on here, when they started to get to the point where they had to be shutting things down. So it's really sad. So this is a page that's got just a whole bunch of stuff about the Institute of Economics. Here's what I'm kind of proud of. If you would do a Google search of just the name Ecolonomics 10 years ago, you wouldn't have found one page of images about the Institute of Economics. And today you're looking and seeing thousands here. We're not going to look at all of them, obviously. A lot of these, Mark has got something to do with because Mark puts together the images that we have on the many thousands of blogs that we've had go through the ecolonomics.org website. Why don't you make sure to pull that up, Mark, to where a little bit later I'm going to show that. This is the home page image on the Institute of Economics website. Here's Dennis Weaver, probably late in his life. That's Dennis in his 70s, probably. He stayed really young looking. Here's interesting, right next to it is Jim and Jessica from our webinar that we did last week. We're pretty well followed by Google. It's pretty cool. So you just put Economics in and that picture comes up on the first page. Dennis was a cowboy. He loved to wear cowboy hats. So here's a picture of Dennis when he was out in the snow, but and he wasn't really a cowboy, but he could look like one. Next to that's a picture of me doing one of our very earliest webinars in what we call the cabin that is in Berthoud. I miss that place. And that's where we started out this venture 4.5 years ago to do webinars for you folks and hopefully give you something out of our hearts, which I hope has happened. This is a cool little graphic about Ecolonomics, and I'm going to expand it here a little bit. And no, I'm not going to go any bigger than this, but it's one that you can find on the Institute of Economics website, and you can look at it because it's very good description and 4 different highlights here of what the Institute of Economics does and is. We changed the logo back in 2009. It had gotten really out of date. I think it was the same one that they'd used since the start in 1993, and so we changed that in 2009, and now we've been using this one for 11 years now, and we believe it's a really good one. I'm going to close this picture down. There's going to be some other pictures of Dennis here coming up, and of our board members. So when we first took over, Scott and I did in 2009, our board was Larry Hagman, who, if you guys are Americans, again, watching TV, was JR on the really famous TV show, Dallas. Linda Gray, who was JR's wife, and Linda maintained a board membership until she was in her mid-70s, and Linda's now almost 80, and you would be shocked. I'll show you some images of her in a minute, and you'll see how young she looks even today. Here's a car that was driven in the Drive to Survive, an electric car. Here's Jerry Weaver. Again, quite a bit younger version of Jerry. Mark Shepard doing one of the webinars. Here's Linda Gray. But let me tell you the age of Linda Gray in that picture, 70. Linda Gray knew how to take care of herself. And Linda never used cosmetics. The only time she ever used anything on her face was if the studios required her to when she was acting. And she would take it off immediately as soon as she could after finishing whatever she was doing. Here's a very cool picture. There's Dennis and Jerry, and there's Linda Gray and Larry Hagman. They were all great friends throughout all of their lives. Linda got married young and then got divorced and never remarried, but the Hagmans, if you ever saw J.R. Ewing, he was sort of the antithesis of what Larry Hagman was as a man. And so don't compare the image that you might have had of J.R. Ewing as being what Larry Hagman was as a person. He was an amazing guy. And he had a ranch in Malibu, California that was completely off-grid with huge expanse of solar panels. And he lived what he taught, as did Dennis with his Earthship home. So here's another picture of Dennis kind of dressed in the same way that he was in that other picture. Here's Dennis in Gunsmoke. That's Chester. Here's one of our board members now, Stuart Lichter, who is a billionaire and reclaims old properties, environmentally contaminated and otherwise. Here's Scott Fardulis, who was my co-leader of the Institute of Ecolonomics after we took it over in that time frame of 2009. We have been very blessed to be talked about a lot in all of Neil Don Walsh's books. Neil Don Walsh writes the series of books called Talks with God. And at the very end of them, he makes a statement in every one of them where he says, here are some things that you should do if this book had any influence on you. And one of them is you should reach out to the Institute of Ecolonomics and offer yourselves as a volunteer to do something for them. So this picture of these young men in Africa, children, was taken by Linda Gray when she was there. Linda, spent this period of years, was the U.S. ambassador to, and it's not right, not a political ambassador. She was the lifestyle ambassador to Africa. So she would make multiple trips to Africa. And these were some, underfed children in that area. There's a little more recent history. This was us in our warehouse growing plants in aquaponic systems in Jiffy cups and styrofoam pieces. This is my son, Dustin, and my grandson, Kyle, quite a number of years ago. Kyle's 14 now. Dennis was an amazing speaker, as you can imagine, being an actor. Didn't have to think about it, could speak off the cuff really easily. And I'm really privileged to have hundreds of hours of videotapes of dentists speaking, and we haven't done nearly as much with them as we would like yet, but we're going to, which is to record them and put them on streaming or on some kind of better media. Over the years, some people completely unrelated to the Institute have actually tried to take our trademark away and tried to do some things. We've been able to stop them in all cases. And in some cases, they're enamored with the word. So this group here did something called Ecolonomics Revised. And we had to kind of threaten them with using the word without our approval. But it's a really great presentation that Dr. Groover did at a conference that he was at. I'm not going to go through it here today, but maybe we could even get him sometime to come on and do a course for us, because he called Ecolonomics the art of ecological decision making, which is a little different than the way that we describe it, define. Here's a expanded photo during the Drive to Survive, and every one of these is an actor, and you probably recognize them. There are many of them, a little older in their lives and they're retired. This is Linda Gray. This is Larry Hagman. One of these is Lindsay Wagner. By the way, Mark, did anybody get my question when I asked who was another famous person who was the president of the Screen Actors Guild? Okay, well, it was Ronald Reagan, who, after he was a Screen Actor Guild president, went into politics. Dennis went into nonprofits after he was president. So, but again, to get that kind of a job, you have to be just really personable, which both those guys were. So I don't know who all these people are. This is Jerry. This is Dennis. This is Shelly Winters, Linda Gray, Larry Hagman. There's supposed to be several other really famous pictures in this, or people in this picture. And this guy I recognize, but I'm just not sure what his name is, nor am I sure who this is over here. So anyway, we'll figure that out another time. Again, back to this, there's the Economics Revised. Here's something that again, somebody wrote about us, and it's actually accurate. And so I don't think this is anything that is being stolen, but the Catalyst House, pretty well-known website, wrote a little blurb about the Institute of Economics and described what we're doing. It was really excellent, and it was done in 2017. And I don't think this LinkedIn page is something that I have something on. Let me just look real quick. I might have pulled up somebody here. Oh, yeah, here's this. Yeah, I did do this. I have no idea. Here's a guy who's really using the word Ecolonomics. He calls it, this is for his LinkedIn page. He says, Ecolonomics Michael Ship. So I need to reach out to him. I have no idea who he is and what he does. See a little bit of his experience. He's been an independent agent for, looks like life insurance or something. He went to Florida Institute of Technology, and then he became a sea captain. Anyway, somebody who obviously is using economics in his description of himself on the LinkedIn page that he had. Here's a guy who has really not done a favor to the Institute of Economics. And I'm not going to be negative about him, but Paul Mobbs, and he has a site called FRAW, I think is the web name, F-R-A-W. And he uses the word economics. You can see this Economics is my irregular long-form essay blog, long-form because in contrast to current fashionable trends for brevity in all things, this paper is designed with long, detailed lists of references and so on. And he says it's knowledge, not news. And it's not bad information, but I will tell you, it's definitely not just knowledge. It is a lot of this guy's, Paul's, opinions, and he he gives them pretty strongly. And so we are not a huge fan of this, but really, we haven't really threatened him or said he should take it off because it's not horrible. But let's see, the next one I had here was, this is specifically the Drive to Survive. So this is the logo that was used for it, and it shows the route. So it starts up here in San Francisco, goes north into Nevada, goes into Salt Lake, comes back down. This is Denver here, goes over to Omaha, Nebraska, goes across Missouri to St. Louis, goes up to Chicago, across into northern Ohio. I don't remember exactly where they stopped there. And then it sort of cuts off, but it goes all the way to New York City. And the whole idea was to showcase alternative fuel vehicles. And they drive during the day, and then they would stop at a major city and do speeches at night. And this was the car that Dennis drove, which was hydrogen powered, I believe. And there were a bunch of electrical vehicles. And again, this is way ahead of its time. This is in 2003. Here's Dennis as Chester in Gunsmoke. Here he is, another one in Gunsmoke. Here's one of the places that they had stopped at the Drive to Survive. They were speaking. It's actually more about Dennis here. Here's one of the cars that was being taken off of a trailer in San Francisco before it started. So that's the Drive to Survive. And then in 2005, we did the Drive for Life. And it was basically a California drive. It went from Vancouver, Canada, right up here, down along the coast, into San Francisco, continued to follow the coast, went into LA, went into San Diego, and then ended in Tijuana. And it was a follow-up to the Drive to Survive. Here's, we have been able to raise some money through the years. We haven't gotten anything like a check for this amount of money in the recent past, but Dennis Weaver got $250,000 in 2003 from the Annenberg Foundation, which is a group that promotes causes involving animals and the environment. And again, really, really cool that money came in. It was used to support the drive. Oops. This is just description. This is all before it happened. Here's what's interesting too, if you see the end of this. Dennis was a strong Democrat, and yeah, here's what's different today versus then. He was very close to President Bush, who was a Republican, because politics didn't necessarily, because you disagreed on your political stance, didn't mean that you couldn't like each other as people. And again, very few people didn't like Dennis, and President Bush was one of those. They got along just amazingly well. And I would say Dennis probably had some positive impact on influencing President Bush and some of the political decisions he made, because they didn't just act so horribly about each other in just as people, let alone as politicians. So as it says here, busy as he is with his motion picture and television career, Weaver devotes most of his non-acting hours to the Institute of Ecolonomics, which is named from his combination of the words ecology and economy. I didn't realize that Touched by an Angel, which it didn't last, I'm not sure it went more than 1 year, was something that he had listed that he had been on. So here's the people who were board members during that time that the Drive to Survive occurred. Shelly Winters, Mike Farrell, Linda Gray, Larry Hagman, Michael Nouri, Lindsay Wagner. After that, Alicia Keys for a short period of time, Ronnie Howard for a period of time. And there's a link to our, no, that's another CSR. Let's look at another article. This is just, I think, a combination of that one. Well, let's see what this one is. This one's written from Dennis's home. Again, a year before it was going to start. LA, San Francisco, Salt Lake City, Denver, Kansas City, St. Louis, Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. Sent it into New York. It was actually in Washington, D.C. So the idea was to deliver a petition with thousands of signatures to Congress, demanding that lawmakers make a declaration of energy independence by increasing fuel efficiency, promoting alternative fuels, and decreasing our dependence on foreign oil, which we've done, by the way, if you look to that. So, that was something that, that the Institute had some influence on. And I think this is just that same article. Yeah, that was the one that I just went to. All right, let's go back to our pictures here. Just going to show a few more here, some historic ones of Dennis. There's Larry Hagman. There's Lindsay Wagner and Linda Gray. I'm going to do a Google search of Linda Gray here in a second. Dennis and somebody else from Gunsmoke, maybe Matt Arnaz. Shelly Fabre. Shelly didn't, she was ahead of her time in coloring her hair different colors. It's my lovely wife. You don't see her too often in our webinar. A young Dennis Weaver. Here's a great saying: changing mass consciousness is an individual responsibility. Folks, if you put anything in the question box, somebody says you were looking okay, Wayne. Thank you. Remember that one? This is an interesting one. I didn't know anything about this. Paul, it's obviously French, and it's about Ecolonomics. We'll just quickly look at this site. Jean-Paul Fitoussi, Ecologie Politique. I have no idea what that is. Interesting. All right. We've been fortunate in being able to be on several other outside webinars and podcasts. Alchemy, which is a very popular one, which has been able to be, I've been able to be on that a couple times. This is one of our aquaponics systems that looks very different than this now, because this is probably 10 years old at my ranch. Here's a pallet building that we probably give out plans for to 5 to 10 people a week. This is a building that can be used to house livestock. It can be built for $160, and that most of that is the roofing material. And it's all made out of pallets, which you should be able to get for free. And it's 8 by 10 feet. So it's 8 feet wide and 10 feet, 8 feet deep and 10 feet wide. So it's a plenty good size for any size of livestock. We have over 40 of those buildings at the Institute of Ecolonomics headquarters site. Oh, come on, I got rid of that picture. Let's get out of here, go away. Okay. Elaine Ingham, who has been a huge speaker for us. Here's Dennis later in life. Mark Shepard. Sarah from our chicken farming. Mike Warren, Alternative Health Concepts, huge friend and partner of our organization. Simple Soil Solutions is Vale Dixon, who just had a baby. She's going to be a speaker for us again in the near future. Nick Burton did a series for us on selling in the economic way. This is a fish farm out in California that we do consulting for through the Institute of Economics. Larry Hagman again over here. This is our shrimp production facility when it was operating. And we operated for 4 years and made money 9 months of the year and lost money for 3 because those 3, the cost of our energy in these archaic greenhouses that we had were just too high. Mark, it looks like there's another question here. Would you read that to me? Because I'm keeping it on the side of my screen. Here's that same greenhouse you saw from a different perspective in another picture next to my house where I live. Mark, could you read me the question? Oh, I think that's on that. I think that's on that French website that was talking about economy. There's another word that's come out of ecology, ecozoic. It's not the same as economic, but another play on that word. There's a pencil drawing of Dennis. Russ Biagni, really good friend of ours, has done several webinars with us. Boy, I'm glad we're not outside there, Mark. It was really loud. John Millen, who's spoken with us and is one of our staff members here in Colorado. Those are his wife and 2 daughters. This younger one here, Alex, plays as a high-level Division I soccer player for the University of Denver. Who they have no idea whether they're going to play. There's Dennis's Earthship house in Ridgeway. There's a view of it here. There's another view of it. All built into the side of the hill. Those windows are all south-facing, and the mast that's used at the north side of all the rooms is tires. And before the Institute of Economics, Dennis had founded what's called the National Tire Institute. And it was through that he was able to get tens of thousands of tires really inexpensively, and that's what he used in his house, way ahead of his time. These are alpacas that are on our ranch eating fodder, which we were a big advocate of for several years during a drought. These are fish at my farm that we harvest. That are fancy goldfish or koi. I think we're getting down to where there's Dennis's, there's military awards and bars on. I hadn't remembered seeing that picture before. Different picture of Dennis. Fodder again. That one we saw before. So here's a book that he wrote that we have copies of if anybody would like to buy some. It's called All the World's a Stage, about Dennis. Don't have a lot of copies left, but probably do have some that we could sell. I'm not sure who published it. I'll look that up to see if it's available on Amazon or other places. So you get all the way down to the bottom of this first page of pictures, and they're still all Institute of Economics. This was in our warehouse. These were tanks that we were using to grow food in. Here's fodder growing that's 6 inches high in about 7 days from seeds. I have a whole series that I did on that. A little chiding for the audience, and most of you are the ones who are going to watch this as a replay. Come to the website more often than you do. We have members that are actively opening every email that we send out. They come to webinars and they never go to the site where you can take your time and view things at your own pace. And get into the website. There's so much there. You would love it. So I'm going to put Linda Gray's name in here real quick. I haven't looked at this in a long time to see if there are any most recent pictures of her. There she is, and she was Sue Ellen on Dallas. Yeah, I probably look at all and see what, I bet she has a wiki page, so we can, there we go. September 12th, 1940, so she is now 80 years old this year. Born a week before me, and I'm born the 19th. Oh, she starred in the play The Graduate, which became a huge movie. I would bet that in her personal life here, it doesn't say anything about her support of the Institute. Oh, she was, by marriage, Lindsay Wagner's aunt. This chair doesn't have a back on it. It's uncomfortable here. For all of her articles about her. I think these people are going to be leaving now, so they're going to be walking right past this door. I'm just looking a little bit more. Oh, shoot, Linda's, she just announced a month ago that her son died. And let's look up Larry Hagman real quick. And his wiki page. So he's a little older than Linda, and can live to be, what, 79, I guess. Yeah, he had done, he was a star of the show I Dream of Jeannie in the 60s. And then obviously made his reputation in Dallas. I just seeing if it said anything here. But there's a refer to Carol O'Connor, died of throat cancer. That doesn't say anything about his role with Dennis and the Institute there. Well, it's a little bit early, but frankly, I'm out of material here today. I knew this would be a little bit short. Unless you guys have got any other questions or comments, I think we're going to call the end of our live webinars in 2020. Call it a day here. Give you a couple minutes to put some other questions in. it's been humbling to follow up Dennis with this project. I'm not sure we've done what he would like for us to have done. I hope we have. And I know he'd be proud of this series of webinars, and he'd be coming on here regularly. He'd just show up, I'm sure. But he was just an amazing guy, and we think a lot of him. And I wish he was still with us. He'd be 93 or 94 now, I believe. So I don't see any more questions or comments, Mark. So I think we can call it a night. I appreciate you guys so much. Starting in January, we have got lots of live webinars. Mark, why don't you just, let's go there before we end. Just off the top of your head, because you probably don't remember all of them. Talk about some of the speakers we've got coming up in January. And he's going to do that probably 3 weeks, I believe. So it's not just one session. So. All right. Well, there's a lot more, I know, because the Reeves out there are really working hard to get speakers. So as we get them scheduled, you will know about it. I want everybody out there to have a happy holiday season. If you're Jewish, you would have finished celebrating Hanukkah. As a Christian, if you are one, you celebrate Christmas. Mark, are there any Muslim holidays specifically this time of the year? Any Islamic holidays at the end of the year? Right. So anyway, everybody. Oh, sorry, Mark. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I realize that. Was a prophet like Muhammad was. All right. Well, everybody have a wonderful holiday season. Be safe. Don't party too hard like this group that's here at my office is doing right now, because I'm guessing they're not really paying attention to the coronavirus. And wear a mask and be safe. Why don't you take us out, Mark?